You know, some lessons are so timeless they just echo through the ages. Today, we're going to unpack a really powerful warning about human nature, freedom, and leadership. And believe me, it's just as relevant now as it was 2,500 years ago.
Wow. I mean, that one sentence pretty much says it all, doesn't it? It's the stark reminder of the dangerous deal we can make when we start craving excitement more than stability, or maybe a powerful leader more than our own freedom.
And here's the kicker. This incredibly deep political lesson, it comes from one of Aesop's fables. And its main characters are, well, they're a bunch of frogs in a pond. It's kind of brilliant, actually, using something so simple to explore a topic this serious.
All right, so let's get into the story. It begins with a society that's in a state most of us would probably dream of. They were totally and completely free. But as you'll see, that very freedom is about to lead to a very, very foolish wish.
So, let's meet our cast of characters. First, you've got the frogs. Think of them as a population that's gotten so used to peace and quiet that they think it's boring. Then there's Jupiter, this kind of cosmic higher power who's about to teach them a lesson the hard way. And finally, the two kings he sends them, King Log and King Crane. And these two could not be more different.
What's so wild is why they wanted a king. See, they weren't in chaos, they weren't suffering, not at all. They were just bored. They literally asked for a king for the show, for the spectacle of it all, because their peaceful, quiet life just felt too dull.
So the frogs ask, and Jupiter delivers. He sends them a king, but he actually sends them two, one after the other, and each one is a perfect and terrifying response to what the frogs were asking for.
Jupiter's first move here is almost like a practical joke. He just chucks this enormous log into their pond. And the splash is huge. The frogs are totally freaked out by this new giant king. But their fear fades really fast when they realize this king doesn't actually do anything.
So King Log, he is the symbol of a stable, safe, totally hands-off kind of government. The kind you barely even notice is there. It's predictable, it's safe, and to the frogs, that made it painfully boring.
Yeah, any respect they had just evaporates. They start using their king as a diving board, as a playground, all while complaining to Jupiter that he's too lazy, too tame, so they go back and demand a real king, someone who would be strong and active.
And this is where the story gets really dark. Jupiter, he's had enough of their complaining, and he decides to give them exactly what they asked for. He sends a crane. And this new king is anything but boring.
King Crane is the absolute embodiment of that strong leader they were begging for. He is active. He is decisive. He fills that power vacuum they were so desperate to create. But his strength is predatory. And his activity? It's deadly.
The consequences are immediate and just brutal. The crane, their real king, starts eating his subjects one by one. The spectacle and excitement they wanted has finally arrived, but it's in the most horrific way they could have possibly imagined.
And this horrific turn brings us right to the fable's core message. The very real, very terrifying danger of choosing spectacle over substance.
So when the terrified frogs go back and beg Jupiter to save them from the crane, his response is just ice cold. It's a harsh lesson in taking responsibility. They got exactly what they demanded, and now the consequences are theirs and theirs alone.
And there it is, the central point, laid out perfectly. That desire for a strong hand to come in and solve the problem of a quiet, peaceful life, well, it's basically a direct invitation for a tyrant to walk right in. And that's really the question this whole story forces us to ask ourselves, isn't it? In our own lives, how often do we look at something that's quiet and stable and mistake it for something that's stagnant and failing?
Because, let's be real, this isn't just some dusty old political story. This whole dynamic between the log and the crane, it's an incredible mental model we can use every single day.
Just think about it. In your career, that log could be that stable, predictable job you think is boring. The crane? That's the thrilling, high-stress startup that might just burn you to a crisp. Or in relationships, the log is that kind, reliable partner, while the crane is the dramatic, toxic person who feels exciting but ultimately just destroys things. It even works for your boss. Do you have a hands-off leader who trusts you, a log, or a micromanaging expert who eats up all your time and energy, a crane?
So, the fable is screaming at us to avoid these traps. Don't mistake a big show for actual competence. Don't demand a fix without thinking about what that fix really looks like.
And maybe most important of all, learn to appreciate the log before you find yourself staring right into the crane's beak.
Okay, so what do we do with all this? How do we actually apply this wisdom and learn to be grateful for the stability we have instead of always wishing for some dangerous, dramatic alternative?
Really, it all comes down to a shift in your perspective. First, you've got to consciously choose stability over drama. Second, you need to recognize that a peaceful, even boring life is an incredible luxury, not some kind of burden. And third, take charge of your own pond. Govern yourself so you never feel that itch to ask some outside ruler to come in and do it for you.
And that's the final haunting image the fable leaves us with. The sound of those dying frogs. It's the ultimate warning. The moment you start thinking that peace and quiet is a problem, that's the moment you start walking straight toward the predator.
So I want to leave you with this one, very personal question. What logjam in your own life have you been complaining about? A job? A relationship? A situation? What quiet, stable, maybe even boring part of your world might actually be the greatest blessing you have right now?